Good morning, everyone. How is the sound right now? Could you give me some thumbs up if you can hear me? I'm seeing that a lot of screens have that. Okay, good. So we'll listen to a couple of sounds of the bell. Uh, please continue to settle in and be comfortable, upright, relaxed, allowing the movement that we just experienced to work its way through. There's still some effects from that happening in our body, I'm sure. Blood flow and the circulation and how that carries various substances through our body helps to cleanse and align. And now the sound of the bell can come through, and I know it's long distance sound of the bell through the computer and satellite and cell phone transmissions. Um, but the space we make in our hearts for it can be the same. And the way that it can remind us to open ourselves deeply to this moment is not virtual. My dear community, this is a story about a cloud. He's a very young cloud. As far as clouds go, might even be called little. This young cloud loved so much to float freely in the sky, to wander here, to wander there, to wisp a little, to transform and change shape a little, all around the corners of the sky. Now, as young clouds do, it's also he kept his eyes out. He was learning. He was observant, and he was noticing other clouds in the sky. He would notice other clouds, especially when they began to gather together. It made him a little bit nervous. But he would come closer to watch, to listen, and he would hear as the clouds gathered that they would tell each other stories in their deep and beautiful cloud voices, how they were preparing themselves for a great transformation. The wind would swirl, the temperatures would press, and it was then that the young cloud would slip away to float freely. He didn't quite like the sound of transformation, also the sound of great transformation. It made him a little bit afraid, and he didn't feel too connected. He didn't feel important enough for something like that. And so he would slip away, as clouds can do. You know, it's kind of like the way a someone who knows how to surf will catch the edge of the curl of a wave to be able to move in one direction or another, will lean this way, lean that. Clouds know very well how to do that with the wind. And so, whoop, he would just slip away to float freely somewhere else in the sky. Well, time went by in this way, and the cloud grew bigger. It grew more full. And still, whenever other clouds would gather, and he would hear those rumblings of stories of great transformation, he would slip away. He would, in fact, he began to avoid other clouds. And he just seemed to notice that time after time, the story always kind of beckoned in the same direction, and he just figured I'd better just keep my distance, stay apart. And so he did. So one day, all alone in the great wide sky, floating over the plains, he saw below him, on the surface of the earth, a circle of people, a great circle of people. He heard below him in that circle the beat of drums, and he watched. He saw their feet upon the earth, moving gently round, stepping round, a rain dance they were making. And he saw, as he floated above, the distress that was in their eyes. He heard the sound of their voice, the anguish. And that sound called something deep inside of him. The heart of this young cloud stirred. But he didn't understand what was happening. He didn't really know how to relate to this feeling which he had, which arose in him listening to the sound of the people on the plains, thirsty, calling for rain. And he saw across the sky a little ways off another cloud, moving, floating, a very faint cloud, very thin cloud. And he called out, "What of this, my friend? What am I hearing? What am I feeling?" And the other cloud said, "Ah, yes, the people. I have not been able to help them. I am so thin and deprived. They are in a drought. They are thirsty. They are dying." And it was then that our little cloud began to have a realization. That realization that was while he was floating along alone in the sky, keeping himself apart and separate, he seemed to be free, he seemed to be safe, he seemed to be okay, and he seemed to be doing pretty much nothing. But in that moment, he began to realize all along that he was important. He still didn't know quite how or why, but he began to feel the sense of importance, of purpose, welling up in him, that perhaps he has been a part of things all along. Perhaps he did have a part to play. And he felt sad. He felt distressed. And he felt inspired all at the same time. And deep within him, that pull towards the people on the plain. He wanted to hold them. He wanted to help them. He wanted to console them and to know them deeply. And as this was happening, unbeknownst to him, he was, as clouds do, churning, right? He was in the midst of his experience, so he didn't notice, but from the outside, you could see the cloud churning, turning in upon itself, moving. And his inspiration welled up in him, and he felt within himself a kind of a cry, a deep cry. And as clouds cry, we know thunder shook the sky. And the winds swirled. And the temperatures pressed. And other clouds, hearing the call, gathered around towards him. And as he felt that togetherness, as he felt that unity with some deep purpose inside himself, our little cloud, deep in his heart of hearts, broke open. Into healing rain. I usually tell this story a little less energetically in children's Dharma talks, but I want to use this story to open my heart, and hopefully you can feel in your heart too an opening, the sense of how every single moment of our lives is a precious opportunity. How every moment has in it this possibility of us both receiving all that the world around us has to offer and being enriched by, being healed through, but also of offering ourselves, our whole selves, and how much a part of each moment of life we actually are, each one of us. And so, beginning this moment of this long moment of opening this talk, I welcome each one of you into this moment, and through each one of us, are welcome so many others. So many others, like all those different clouds that need to come together in order for there to be enough of the right conditions for thunder, for rain, for healing rain. Through each one of us, so many others are present. We are all here together today. So I want to shift the imagery a little bit and use the same pictures of clouds and sun and rain and such in slightly different ways. Please don't get caught in the little details of the descriptions. There are many there are many sorts of storm clouds in our lives. Sometimes they are like a healing rain, but sometimes they're not. And we often use that image to convey moments of suffering, of hardship. And for each one of us, again, there are certain storm clouds that are present, perhaps that we would rather not have in our atmosphere. They're not comfortable, they're not easy, they're not pleasurable, certainly. And when we look around us in the world, we also see storm clouds that belong to all of us, in a sense, like the issues that we are sharing together as a society, as a beautiful planet. And really, our first reaction inwardly when suffering happens is that we would rather not have that, right? None of us really enjoys suffering, and none of us enjoy watching others suffer, especially that. And also none of us enjoy watching how, especially inadvertently or out of ignorance or out of a feeling of lack, we are somehow connected to someone else's suffering. Or how we feel trapped in that the choices we make in our lives, or the choices we feel the only choices we have to make in our lives, are also at the expense of others. And that kind of suffering hurts a lot. There are parts of our bodies that we would rather not have to deal with. Conditions in our body we would rather not have. There are situations in our emotional life, perhaps tied to important relationships we have, perhaps tied to experiences from the past. Our hearts and minds are burdened by, and we would rather get rid of these things if we could, just like put them over there and live free of them. Some of us are so lucky, I would put myself in this category too, as to have so many wonderful things that I like to do and that I can be involved in and that I've committed myself to be a part of, that becomes a source of suffering. Right? It's not that I have necessarily a whole bunch of tremendous sufferings I'm burdened by in the world around me, but that I've taken on so much that I then cause myself suffering. It's a very lucky position to be in, very fortunate and affluent position to be in. And sometimes I wish, oh, why did I say yes to that too? Right? But I'm saying yes to such wonderful things. I, really, What kind of suffering is that? But in all these situations where there are storm clouds in our sky, in our atmosphere, in our life, where we'd rather not have to go through them, have them, we are like the clouds. We are like the young cloud in the story, whose way through is not to avoid, but whose way through is to embrace and to allow that story of which we are a part, right, to really live inside of us, so we can gather fully into ourselves, as the cloud does, in order to let go into rain. The secret of this transformation lies not in trying to change ourselves into something else, into something different, please. It's so tempting, especially when we have a lot of positive conditions in our life, to try to transform ourselves into something else. That is not the path. The secret is coming home to ourselves, to discover who and what we truly are. And that coming home includes the storm. It includes the pain and the suffering. When we are burdened with our stress and our anxiety, we feel overwhelmed with anger and sadness about things that are happening to us or around us. Life appears to be full of suffering. Life can even have in it despair. It's like the cloud is obscuring the sun, right? And when the cloud is obscuring the sun, we are unable to take in the real nourishment we need. We are in a limited capacity to help ourselves and others. It's quite small capacity. But when we are able to come home to ourselves as we are, to connect deeply with life as it is, just as it is, our understanding will have more clarity. Our understanding will be shaped out of thoughts and feelings that have to do with life in the present moment, and not an agitation or a fear that we are just spinning around in our mind. Our actions will have the possibility of coming from that place inside where there is togetherness, where we are integrated, where we feel integrity, where there is ease and stability and inner freedom. Because these are things that also live in us, are a part of us. And when we fully come home to ourselves, we come home to storms, we come home to suffering, but we also come home to the spaciousness there. The rain that comes from the storm cloud is essential to all of life. So when the sun is obscured by the clouds, it's actually not a problem, right? It's a part of our experience, and we have to work into that experience, do that rain dance, or become that cloud and gather yourself fully in order to transform and be what you really need to be or can be, what life is actually asking of you in the moment. In every moment, we have an opportunity to give and to receive, to find nourishment and to offer healing. This first bit of coming home to ourselves we call Shamatta Stopping, right? And the stopping is the stopping of our habit energy. It's the stopping of just running along and doing things the way we normally do. It's the stopping of telling the story to ourselves in the same way that we usually do. That story about oh, this is just who I am. Oh, this is all I have, right? Or the story of how the other person is so wrong and how they really need to learn their lesson, right? We have a lot of stories like that, and we just tell them habitually. We have a lot of experiences in our bodies, in our minds, in our daily life that we've just built into habits, and we just roll along. Shamatta asks us, whoa, come home. Check it out. What's really going on here? And the Buddha offered wonderful practices for us to be able to gain that stable ground of spaciousness, to really see, to really feel, to really understand what our moment is. Sati, mindfulness. Smriti, mindfulness. Sati is the Pali word, S-A-T-I. Smriti is a really fun one. You should just try saying it. It's nice to say on your lips. S-M-R-T-I. Smriti. It's good for English speakers to say fun words like that. Gets us out of our shell, you know? Smriti. We don't usually put so many consonants together. But when we enter into the practice of mindfulness, we open the door to the present moment, right? We all know the structure of the teaching. And we are invited by the Buddha to come home to our bodies, to feel them, to live into them. Not with like this idea of, oh, there's my body there, but from the inside out, the body in the body. Bring your mind into your body. Bring your heart open to feel your body and experience the wholeness of your body in that moment, where you are. Your eyes open, taking in the world around you, right? Your ears open, receiving the vibrations and sounds. Your nose smelling, your tongue tasting, your whole body feeling and sensing warmth, movement, direction. Your breath. All of these wonderful sensations and parts of living in the present moment in our bodies help us to stay grounded in this moment of life, our only moment of life. And from here, we feel. We feel whether things are pleasant or unpleasant. We feel whether we're like in an emotional state of our mind or whether we're grounded in the senses of the moment. We feel our bodies, our feelings. And when we notice those spaces, we also can see more clearly the activity of our mind, our thoughts churning and turning, thinking about this, thinking about that, worried about this, feeling joyful about that. And the mind there doing its thing, trying to figure out, trying to know, trying to understand the world. We can invite it to calm down so it doesn't take up so much space. Yeah? That's shamatha. Right? Coming home to our bodies, our feelings, our mind. And in that space, beginning to experience life as it is. And there are certain beautiful things that happen in that moment. The moment when we settle in and we release even just one layer of our stress with an out-breath. Something else fills up that space. The awareness of life. So rich and so beautiful. Please open your heart to allow it in. What are those colors you see? Those shapes and forms before you, around you. Those sounds. That scent, that taste in your mouth. Without judgment. How wonderful. How wonderful that all this is happening. Now we are not lost. Now we are stable, grounded, somewhat free. Now we can begin to understand our bodies, our feelings, our mind, our relationships, our world, our friends, our spouses, our children, our politics, our climate, our race. From here, all of that has a different look. In the discourse on the full awareness of breathing, the Buddha offered 4 breaths at the end of his 16 breathings, the 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th breathings in that discourse. They go something like this. Breathing in, I am aware of impermanence. Things are changing. Breathing out, I'm aware of impermanence. Breathing in, I am aware of the fading of desire. Breathing out, I am aware of the fading of desire. It means not so much tension and grasping energy. It's like, oh, it's softening, it's opening. Right? Breathing in, I contemplate the no beginning and no end nature of things. That means I see the continuation and transformation of one thing into another. No division between them. Right? Breathing out, I contemplate the no beginning, no end nature of things. And the last breath, breathing in, I let go. Breathing out, I am letting go. I'm letting go into the opening that is revealed by this deep looking. These 4 breathings, and I'm going to spend a little more time with that. Don't worry about memorizing them if you didn't know them yet. These 4 breathings are the instruction that we're given for how to understand our world. Our world is us, our bodies, our feelings, our thoughts. Our world is the body, feelings, and thoughts of other people. Our world is our home, our friends and family, our town, our community, our country, its politics, all of these things, right? And to understand them from the perspective of practice is to use our breath and shamatha, full stop, coming into the present moment as a base, in order to look deeply with the eyes of impermanence and to see the transformation, the continuation of one thing into another, no beginning, no end. That's the instruction we're giving for how to understand the world. So rather than going back and diving into how that's all presented in the teachings, I'm just going to stay with that group of 4 breathings. I like to turn it into 2 breathings. In fact, that whole sutra I find really lovely to do that way. So instead of 16 breathings, I have 8. And I just pair them. Because there's something to the gesture of my breath which helps me in that way. If you feel into how you breathe and you take an in-breath, it's a kind of a gathering in, right? You're really collecting yourself as your mind and your body and your breath all come together, breathing in. There's a collecting and a kind of awareness, and breathing out, there's like a release and a letting go, a settling down. That's the natural gesture which is in our breathing when we practice conscious breathing. So if you take the 13th and the 14th and you put them together, the content works very beautifully like that. Breathing in, I hold something in my awareness in the light of impermanence, right? So it might be my body, for example. I breathe into my body, aware of its impermanence. The guided meditation David gave had a lot of this in it, right? Seeing how things are coming to be and dissolving all the time in our body, right? So I hold my body with my in-breath and the awareness of impermanence, And breathing out, the next breath is the fading of desire. That's a release, a letting go of grasping and attachment I might have to my body. And instead of holding on to ideas I have about my body, places I'm stuck energetically in my body, all the stories I might have about my body, instead of holding on to that stuff, I let it go. The release of desire, the release of craving, of grasping, of attachment. I open up to experience what my body's actually offering in this moment. And there may be part of it that hurts, but then there might be all these other parts which are doing just fine. Remember Thai's teaching on the non-toothache, right? When you have a toothache, it's very easy to concentrate just on your toothache, and gosh, it's really horrible that you have such a toothache. And all you can do is suffer with your toothache. But your reality is that so many other teeth in your mouth are not hurting at all. It's just one, right? And your reality is that other parts of your body are doing just fine, and your toothache is there. But we don't see the other parts that are going well because we're focused on the toothache. Similarly, when we open our hearts, releasing attachment and grasping energy through looking with impermanence, allowing things to change, right? We can experience a lot of joy, a lot of space, a lot of connection, a lot of stability. Breathing in, aware of impermanence. Breathing out, the fading of desire, the release, the letting go of my attachment and my grasping. And that's that pair, impermanence and release. And when you do a deep looking meditation, don't just abstractly wander through your mind. Pick something to hold, to look at. Maybe it's a particular relationship. Maybe it's a particular emotion, right? But when you look into that relationship, you look into that emotion with eyes of impermanence. It means what? It means you're going to see how all different kinds of things are transforming and changing, right? Transforming themselves and changing into this emotion, and potentially transforming out of this emotion into something else. How all the different people play into that, how all the different experiences of your life play into that. Impermanence is really no different from interbeing. It's just using the eye of time instead of space, right? But to see how one thing transforms itself into another, that is impermanence. Or how one thing transforms itself into itself but different, right? Is allow that transformation to take place. Breathing in, I see my anger with eyes of impermanence. Breathing out, I make space to stop grasping onto my anger and making it so important. The fading of my grasping, my desire. So doing that is to look deeply, like, oh, what has come together and transformed itself into my anger? And where could this anger go and transform out, right? I make space, and insight begins to emerge in me. And the experience of what's underneath that anger begins to reveal itself. And the 15th and 16th are really just a continuation of this. The same kind of pattern. Breathing in, I see the no beginning, no end nature of the object of my meditation. Breathing out, I let go. I let go into the freedom to know truly who, what, where this object is. Yeah. The image of the cloud in the moment of turning to rain, right? Breathing in, I see the no beginning, no end nature of the cloud. The cloud pulling itself into itself. Thunder cracking open, transforming to rain. Where does that begin? Right? Where does that begin? How can you say where it begins? Is it in the rain dance? Because that inspired the cloud? Is it when the cloud first noticed others and learned from assimilation in a way how they gather and thunder and break to rain when it was very young? Where is the beginning of that? Right? And where is the end of the cloud? The cloud ending when it becomes rain? Is the cloud no more? When you feel the rain on your skin, you know the cloud. You know the cloud deeply as the cloud wanted to know you, hearing your call, your parched call. I see some people drinking. That's very nice. Breathing in, I see the no beginning, no end nature of the cloud. Breathing out, I can let go to know the true nature of the cloud. It's not just that the cloud is the rain. The rain is also me. I am the rain. I am also the cloud, and the flowers that will be nourished by this rain also. Right? We go beyond grasping onto ideas, and we go deep to the place of our true home, our true nature. Please practice like this with your emotions. Emotions are very tricky. Emotions make us feel very important. And we are very important. Remember the cloud, right? Even hiding away in the corner of the sky is playing a part, right? And the people on the plains experiencing drought are very aware of the part that the cloud is playing when it's hiding off in the corner, right? We are always very important. But our emotions make me, mine, myself very important. And they tend to separate us out from others. So please practice looking deeply with eyes of impermanence at your emotions. See that they do not belong to you. They are simply manifesting because those are the conditions that are there. And by seeing that, you can release your holding on to them. Allow them to flow. Allow yourself to break open, perhaps. Right? But allow the transformation to happen, the letting go as you break open. Real grieving. Real grieving includes letting go. When I was when I received the news of my grandmother's death many years ago, I was expecting that I would be very sad because I knew her very well, and she'd been very important to me through much of my life. But actually, I was not sad. And I attribute that experience to deep looking with eyes of impermanence, with eyes of no beginning and no end. Because I had taken a lot of time, even to talk with her about it, but to look with those eyes and to see how my grandmother wasn't just in her body, how she lived as inspirations and learning that I had in me and in my siblings and my cousins, how she was also, very much a part of my life and my mother. And even when I went to a museum in Paris and I'd look at the painting on the wall, and then I'd feel my grandmother's voice come up inside me and say, nah, that one just doesn't quite have it. This critical eye for art and aesthetics, which when things were on and things were off, and things are off, just don't bother. Things are on, yes, I like that. Let's go for that. And she was very discerning that way. And I did inherit that, and I could hear her voice in me with that, and we share that sense of aesthetics, I should say. She transmitted some of that to me. So that's just an example of the way that I looked and saw that the way that I actually know my grandmother as an entity is not that she's an entity, but she's a lived experience in me through that kind of deep looking. And so when I got the news of her death, the only thing that I needed to do was to practice to release her, the idea I had of her living in Somerset, Pennsylvania. Right? I still had this idea that she was there in her body. But now I could let that go, and suddenly my grandma was really, truly everywhere for me. That was through the practice of looking deeply with eyes of impermanence. We called her Oh Mom, so I would say, Oh Mom. Breathing in, I see Oh Mom with my eyes of impermanence. And I look to see all the things that transform into her and all the ways she transforms on. Breathing in, I see her no beginning, no death nature. No beginning, no end nature, sorry. And then her birth and her death no longer look like marking points, but just part of the continuum. And I feel that and I breathe with that. Not as a set of ideas, but I really open my heart. And she still lives very much for me every day. Any time that I want to be present with Oh Mom, she's very much a part of my life. So I had another experience I want to share with you, which is just a little different, where I received the news of my brother-in-law's death. And he was in his mid-30s. My grandma was in her mid-90s. And that didn't quite work for me. And it certainly didn't work in the same way because I'd never taken any time to practice to look at my brother-in-law with eyes of impermanence. Mostly I had known him before I really settled into this practice. And hearing that he had been killed was really hard. And I had a lot of very confusing thoughts. Thoughts like, that's not fair. Thoughts like, my nephew will never get to know his dad. Really. He's already somewhat estranged from him. And that kind of thinking in me caused me a lot of anguish. I had thoughts like, what could I have done? Maybe that might have helped. Why did I not see that I had that opportunity? Right? And therefore I have this regret and guilt and shame come up. These are things that I create in my mind, right? The reality is that life, with its birth and its death, and my brother-in-law with his life, however long or short it was, it manifested in a body and now was not manifesting in his body anymore. That's the reality. But in my mind, I'm still holding on to all these ideas and stories of how it should be, how it could be, what I want it to be instead of like this. That's all inside me. Life has already moved on. So I have some catching up to do, right, when I get that news. And at first I was really confused. I didn't even know how to talk to my sister or how to talk to my nephew. I could acknowledge with them, but I really couldn't connect deeply because it hurt and I was confused and somewhat angry and somewhat self-critical, right? And all these things are tension, and it's me and it's mine and the stuff going on inside. And I really need that practice of impermanence and no beginning, no end. I got lost in that locked up space for a number of days until I saw the pictures of his funeral. He is from Guatemala, and his big family in Guatemala had a beautiful funeral procession to their family burial place and laid his body there. And I saw pictures from that event, and watching that slideshow cracked open my heart. Somehow I just was breathing with presence, and the inspiration of what needed to happen, right? What I really needed to be in touch with myself was that I'm hurting, not to try and figure something out or go somewhere. First, I just need to hurt. and I cracked open, and when I wept, suddenly my practice came back. My heart opened. Big, important piece. My heart opened. And in weeping, I was able to breathe. I was able to be there, to hold, to take care of myself and the need I had for comfort in that moment. And in so doing, it opened the possibility for me also to look deeply. Remember, the looking deeply takes place from the place of Shamatta. It comes from the ground of our true presence. You can't look deeply while you're running fast through a sea of turbulent emotions. It won't work. You have to really come home and stop. And then you look deeply. I say, my dear brother, where have you come from? What are all the things that transformed themselves into you and you manifested the way you did? And I look back at his life and I see those things. And I open my heart wide. And I see then, going forward, the transformation and continuation, how now there are parts of him that are alive in me. There are parts of him in my mother, my father, my sister, of course, and then, most obviously, my nephew, right? Born of him. There, a tender young boy that I can see his father in him, and I can know that. But my brother lives not just in his nephew, he lives in anyone who he had the chance to connect with in any way. If you open your heart to find that, you can touch the continuation and transformation of all your loved ones. You can honor them. You can cry with them. You can laugh with them. You can give them the chance to continue to transform and live into life with every breath and every step that you make. Impermanence is life. It's not that impermanence makes life possible. Impermanence is life. There's nothing that stays the same, nothing that is static. We are all constantly interweaving and interwoven. Oh, I love it. Dear friends, the sutras repeat to us over and over again very simple instructions about how to enter into a right relationship, a right view with ourselves and our life. From the Discourse on the Middle Way, Katyana, most people are bound to the internal formations of discrimination and preference, grasping and attachment. Those who are not bound to the internal knots of grasping and attachment no longer imagine and cling to the idea of a self. They understand, for example, that suffering comes to be when conditions are favorable, and that it fades away when conditions are no longer favorable. They no longer have any doubts. Their understanding has not come to them through others. It is their own insight. This is called right view. It's the way of the Tathagata. It's the way the Tathagata would describe right view. Bhikshus, find a quiet place to meditate. This is from the Discourse on the Dharma Seal. Find a quiet place to meditate, such as in a forest, under a tree, Shamatta. Right? There, look deeply to see that form has the seeds of suffering, that it is empty of separation, that it is impermanent. As a result, you'll not be attached to form. You'll reach a non-discriminative understanding of form. Then do the same for your feelings, for perceptions, for mental formations, for consciousness. Realize the non-discriminative understanding of feelings, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness. Again, in the Discourse on Knowing the Better Way to Catch a Snake, Bhikshus, there are 6 bases for views. This means that there are 6 grounds of wrong perception that we need to drop. What are the 6? First, there's form, whether belonging to the past, the future, or the present, whether it is our own form or the form of someone else, whether it is subtle or gross, ugly or beautiful, near or far, such form is not mine, it is not me, it is not the self. Bhikshus, please look deeply so you can see the truth concerning form, then feelings, then perceptions, and mental formations, whether these phenomena belong to the past or future, whether they're ours or someone else's. Right? Such phenomena are not mine, are not me, are not the self. And there's a beautiful twist in this one where it says, after you go through form, feeling, perception, mental formation, and consciousness, it says, 6th, there is the world. And this is for all of us really, truly benevolent people. We really want to do good, and we want to be a part globally, worldly, cosmically of everything. We can get caught in the idea that we are as big as the world. Right? There is the world, and some people think the world is the self is the world is me, and I will continue to exist without changing even when I die, because I am the world, and the world is me. I am eternal. I will never disappear. Please meditate. So you can see that the world is not me, it's not mine, it's not the self. Please look deeply to see the truth concerning the world. Over and over again, we receive these teachings, this instruction. How wonderful to have a resource like this. And how wonderful that we all, evidenced by our day together today, we all have the time to do this. We all have the space to do this. Please take that time, take that space to really come home, shamatha, and look deeply into the issues that you're facing, the relationships that are meaningful to you. Breathe impermanence. Breathe no beginning, no end. Allow the heart to open, to become a part of the flow of life. Every moment we have this opportunity. And the rain, it is so essential. Become the cloud. Crack open. Right? Fill the purpose of this moment. Become it. I'm going to invite the bell now. And we'll, I think, have a short break. I think Fern's going to come on and explain what's going to happen next.